In another statement, Petra stated that the Martin that she knew was gentle, that he was never violent towards her or his mother or verbally abusive. His mother apparently did aggravate him and that they had words and he would be caustic to her sometimes. But she said that he was a gentle person and also was interviewed by the media at some point.
He was gentle and kind and would look after me.
Welcome to the Wasp Files. Some of this material may be distressing and viewer discretion is advised. There's a general consideration that Martin was portrayed as being lonely and isolated and friendless. Not exactly the case. This episode will be dealing with a lady that was very, very close to Martin, which was his girlfriend in the 3 months prior to the massacre that occurred on the 28th of April 1996. A young lady by the name of Petra Frances Wilmott, and she had applied to an ad that Martin had placed in the local newspaper. He was looking for someone to assist him with his business where he was in essence doing gardening and lawns for the local community. Petra responded to the ad and they hit it off, and she was working with him for a while before they became partnered. Following the massacre that occurred at Port Arthur, Petra Wilmott was, of course, interviewed by police, and she provided a number of statements in relation to her relationship with Martin Bryant, his character, and some of the things that she observed during their time together. Going through the witness statements, there are, once again, some odd aspects to what she had observed or claimed in her statements, and we're going to look at some of those in this episode. The first thing was that prior to the massacre, Martin and Petra had been very close, been in love, and as stated, the night before the massacre, they had gone out dancing to one of the local nightclubs, had come home, had spent the night together, had showered, and then parted the next day, the Sunday morning, the 28th of April 1996. Petra had stated in her witness statements that Martin had set an alarm for 6 a.m. and that contrary to usual practice, the alarm was brought into the bedroom because the alarm was usually fairly loud. So Martin had informed Petra that he had something to do on that Sunday, but didn't elaborate what that thing was. However, he did set an alarm for 6 a.m. The alarm woke them both at that time, but according to Petra, they rose around about 7 a.m. She said that Martin had been in a rush to push her out the door, so to speak. Usually we take time when we wake up in the morning and sometimes go for a walk, so it seemed a bit out of character that he was in a rush to do whatever he needed to do on that Sunday morning. They departed, and the next that Petra had heard about Martin's involvement with the Port Arthur Massacre was that she had seen the reports that began flooding all of the news channels that there was a siege at the Seascape Cottage. Petra had also stated in one of her witness statements that the night before, which was the Saturday the 27th of April, that she wanted to come over and see Martin at his place in Clare Street, Newtown, and that he had communicated to her not to come over until he had received a call from Melbourne. And she stated, "What's the call about?" And he said, "Oh, it's in relation to a German TV, and that if they call, you can come over at 5 p.m. As it turned out, supposedly this call did not occur, and that she was able to come over after that time at 5 p.m. So Martin, in essence, was waiting for some kind of call from Melbourne, which he then asked Petra to wait for before she could come over and visit him. She went on to mention there was no further indication that a German TV had been bought by Martin, or no further discussion on the purchase of such a television. It was known that Martin would take trips to Melbourne and interstate to other cities in Australia as well, Queensland being one of those. At the time when the reports had surfaced that there was a siege occurring down at Seascape on the Sunday, Petra had rung up Martin's mother, Bryant, and had communicated that she was worried. And Carleen had responded, "Oh, look, I don't think it's a problem because Martin was probably in Melbourne because he had a tendency to take trips to Melbourne and not let people know that he was going there." So initially, she was trying to allay Petra's concerns about Martin being involved in the Seascape Cottage siege. Later that evening, of course, both Carleen and Petra were visited by the police and informed that they believed that Martin Bryant was conducting the siege that took place at the cottage, at Seascape Cottage. Subsequent to that information, the police had, of course, interviewed Carleen and Petra in detail. And there were some observations that were made in those statements which deserve answers to, and seem to suggest that there were some odd occurrences surrounding Martin's involvement in Port Arthur. One of the observations that Petra had made in her statement was that Martin had had few friends, but that he had what she called an enemy, someone that had distressed Martin enough that he would be reluctant to answer the phone in case this person called. She stated this person was known as Tiger. She did not know who Tiger was, but she said that Martin didn't like this person and was afraid of answering the phone in case they rang. It is, of course, coincidental that Michael Rick Dyson, who was the Tasmanian Special Operations Group police officer who some had accused of being one of the shooters and having involvement in the Seascape Cottage siege, also had the nickname Tiger. Of course, this is yet to be determined, and in conversations with Michael Dyson, he strenuously denies any involvement in the siege or any operational aspect of the Port Arthur Massacre. Though I have had it confirmed from credible sources, ex-police officers, that Michael was known by the nickname Tiger. During their investigations and questioning of Petra, the police had also offered some surprising lines of questioning, one of which was that whether or not Martin had owned firearms that Petra was aware of, and she stated that she had never seen any firearms that he owned or ammunition, and that he didn't talk about firearms, though she did say that on occasion he would point his finger and cock to fire an imaginary pistol, not in any aggressive manner, but just a mannerism that he did show at some point. She said that he liked movies, action movies, particularly films with Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Steven Seagal, which is not anomalous in that regard, because around that time, in the sort of mid-90s, action films with those superheroes were fairly prevalent and were very popular with a lot of young men and women. But he certainly liked action movies and talked about the excitement of action movies. In another statement, Petra stated that the Martin that she knew was gentle, that he was never violent towards her or his mother or verbally abusive. His mother apparently did aggravate him, and that they had words and he would be caustic to her sometimes. But she said that he was a gentle person, and also was interviewed by the media at some point.
He was gentle and kind and would look after me.
So Petra certainly didn't have any observations or statements made that she considered Martin to be a dangerous, sadistic or violent person at all, nor that she had seen firearms or ammunition. Another observation that Petra had made in one of her statements was that at some point they were planning to go out for an outing, and that she noticed that on Martin's belt was a black pouch with a flap over the top that was held by either Velcro or a stud. She was not informed by Martin what that pouch contained. She said it wasn't a mobile phone pouch. There was no clear perspex window on the front. In a later statement, she said that it seemed identical to a knife pouch that somebody else had worn, but once again, that hasn't been determined. One of the peculiar aspects of the statement that Petra Wilmott had made to police relates to a photograph that was shown to her. I'm going to read her statement word for word, as it's somewhat confusing, but it is quite odd. I have viewed a black and white photograph shown to me by the policewoman. The eyes look familiar, but the only guy I've met who looks this age, which is a friend of Martin's, is the guy that works at the photo shop, I think Asbestos in Elizabeth Street. I don't think this is a photograph of him though, as that has hair the same colour as Martin's, and his hair is about shoulder length and was tied back in a ponytail. I don't think he had a beard either. To my knowledge, Martin did not know the man outside of Asbestos. Now that seems to suggest that she was shown a photograph of an individual with Martin outside of the photo shop at Asbestos in Elizabeth Street, and that this person was similar in appearance to Martin, but that she didn't recognise him. Once again, I don't know why that photograph would have been shown to Petra, what the intention was, or what information there was regarding the photograph being taken and who that individual was. Other questions that were asked by the police when interviewing Petra Wilmott were, was she aware that Martin owned any handcuffs? According to reports, handcuffs were used during the Port Arthur Massacre in regards to securing one of the hostages, Glenn Pearce, to the stair rail that was at the Seascape Cottage. Petra basically confirmed that she was not aware of any handcuffs that were found. There was some reports that empty handcuff packets were located at 30 Clare Street in Newtown, but this hasn't been confirmed either. In regards to Martin Bryant's mental conditions, Petra stated that she was not aware that Martin was taking any medication. She did, however, say that she had seen a bottle of pills with a complicated name she couldn't pronounce that began with E. I have seen psych reports that Martin Bryant was on medication for schizophrenia, that this medication should not be taken if you don't have schizophrenia, and there was some contradiction in terms from some of the psych reports as to whether or not Martin was schizophrenic. So once again, it's a little nebulous in regards to his mental states. At some point, Petra was informed by police that the shooter had used the term wasps and Japs during the Port Arthur Massacre, and that she had confirmed that Martin had spoken in relation to those terms in the past as well. She was also played an audio recording of the conversation between Terry McCarthy, the police negotiator, and Jamie, which was held during the siege at the Seascape Cottage, and she confirmed that the voice of Jamie was in fact Martin Bryant, and that she recognised some of the terminology that was used. So the observations that Petra had made about her boyfriend Martin Bryant was that, once again, there was some contradictions there, that there seemed to be, on the surface, they were happy, in love, that he was gentle and kind, looked after her, but that there may have been some aspects to his behaviour or character that she was unaware of or had no knowledge of. And some of those seem to suggest that Martin had involvement with some other people outside the sphere of their relationship. Thank you for joining the Wasp Files. Please feel free to share far and wide, and see the Dropbox link on the YouTube channel and some of the material that is also available on the Facebook page Wasp the Port Arthur Massacre, which is free to download in support of some of the episodes. Also, please see the link to the Buy Me a Coffee page, which helps support the channel and keep us running. And keep watching, and every Tuesday night there'll be new episodes of the Wasp Files up for you to view. Thank you.